How many businesses have you started in your head this year? 3? 5? Be honest. Now, how many of those actually exist right now in the real world, making even $1? Yeah, that's the problem I want to talk about today. Because it's not that you're lazy, and it's not that your idea is bad. There's something else going on, something quietly wired into your brain that's kept you stuck on someday for way longer than you'd like to admit. And by the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly what it is and exactly how to break it, starting this week. The person who's still thinking about starting a business in 5 years, they're not lazy. They're not stupid. In fact, some of the smartest, most capable people I know are stuck in this exact loop right now. And if you're honest with yourself, you already know if you're one of them. Picture someone with a good job, decent salary, the kind of person who reads business books on their lunch break and watches videos exactly like this one at night. Same business idea for 3 years now. Something small, nothing crazy, honestly kind of obvious once you hear it. The math checks out. It could work. They've even told a few friends about it, and every single one said the same thing. Bro, just do it. But it hasn't happened. Not because the idea is bad, not because they lack the skill. It hasn't happened because somewhere along the way, starting stopped being about the business and started being about protecting an idea of themselves. As long as the business stays in their head, it's perfect, it's flawless, it's the thing that's going to change their life one day. But the moment they actually start it, it becomes real. And real things can fail, real things can embarrass you, real things can prove in front of everyone that maybe you're not as capable as you thought you were. That right there, that's the trap. And it's got a name. Psychologists call it the fear of a possible self being disproven. Basically, as long as you never try, you get to keep believing you could have made it. The dream stays intact. But the second you actually take the leap, you're putting a number on it. Success or failure, real feedback. And for a lot of people, that feels more dangerous than staying broke and unfulfilled forever. Crazy, right? People will literally choose a guaranteed, slow, quiet unhappiness over the small chance of a fast, loud failure. That's not weakness. That's just how our brains are wired. We're built to avoid pain way harder than we're built to chase reward. Loss just hits different. Studies on this go back decades. This idea that losing something hurts about twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good. So when your brain weighs start a business on one side and keep things exactly how they are on the other, it's not even a fair fight. Staying still feels safe. Starting feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. Staying still isn't actually safe. It just feels that way. Because while you're out here protecting your idea by never testing it, life is still moving. Rent's still due. Kids are getting older. That itch in your chest, the one that whispers, you were supposed to build something, that doesn't go away just because you ignored it. It just gets quieter. And then, one day, it gets loud again. After you get laid off. Or right after a friend's random side project takes off and you think, wait, I had that idea 2 years before they did. So if fear of failure isn't really the core issue, what is? Let's talk about the second trap, and this one's just as sneaky. It's the myth of the perfect moment. You've heard this voice before. I'll start once I save up more money. I'll start once things calm down at work. I'll start once I finish this course, read this book, watch a few more videos like this one. Sound familiar? Here's the uncomfortable truth. There is no perfect moment. There never was. The people who made it, the ones you're binge-watching interviews of, they didn't wait for stability. They started messy. They started broke. They started with a day job they hated and a business idea they were embarrassed to even say out loud. Waiting for the perfect moment isn't patience. It's procrastination wearing a really convincing disguise. And deep down, most people already know this. But knowing it and acting on it are two completely different things, because the brain doesn't run on logic when it comes to big, scary decisions. It runs on comfort. And comfort will lie to you every single time, dressed up as being responsible, or just being smart about timing. Okay, so now you might be thinking, all right, I get it, fear of failure, waiting for the perfect moment, but what actually breaks the cycle? Because just knowing this stuff isn't the same as fixing it, and you're right. So let's talk solutions, because this is where it gets good. The first shift you need to make is redefining what starting actually means. Most people think starting a business means quitting your job, building a website, printing business cards, doing some big dramatic launch. That's not starting. That's chapter 3. Starting is way smaller and way less scary than that. Starting is sending one message to a potential customer. Starting is making one sample product and asking 5 strangers if they'd pay for it. Starting is spending a Saturday afternoon testing your idea in the smallest, cheapest, most low-stakes way possible. Because here's the secret. You don't need to believe in the whole business yet. You just need to believe in the next tiny step. That's it. Confidence doesn't come before action, no matter what the motivational posters tell you. Confidence comes after action. You take a small step, it doesn't kill you, your brain goes, oh okay, that was survivable. And suddenly the next step feels a little less terrifying. That's literally how it works, not the other way around. The second shift, and this one's huge, is separating your identity from the outcome. This is the part so many people never figure out. They tie their entire self-worth to whether this one business idea succeeds, which means testing it feels like testing themselves as a human being. But here's what the people who actually build successful businesses understand, usually the hard way. The business is not you. It's an experiment. It's a bet you're placing with information you currently have. If it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you're a failure, it means you got data. Real data about a real market that you didn't have before. Every person who's built something worth having has a trail of failed attempts behind them. Not because they're reckless, because they understood that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a required ingredient of it. Third shift, stop trying to skip the awkward beginner phase. This one gets people so bad. Everyone wants to go from I have an idea straight to I'm running a profitable business, and skip over the middle part where you're clumsy and unsure and kind of bad at this, and honestly a little embarrassed. But that middle part isn't optional. It's not a design flaw. It's the actual path. Every single successful business owner you admire was once bad at this. They just didn't let being bad at it stop them from continuing. I know what some of you are thinking right now. Okay, but what if I test it and it just fails? What if the 12 people who say yes don't actually pay when it's time to pay? Fair, that can happen. But ask yourself something. Which version of failure actually costs you more? Failing after 72 hours of testing, where you've lost basically nothing but a few awkward conversations? Or failing after 3 years of someday, where you've lost time you can never get back and you still don't even know if the idea would have worked? One of those failures teaches you something. The other one just quietly steals your 20s or your 30s while you convince yourself you're being careful. There's a reason almost every founder story you've ever heard follows the same shape. Messy start, embarrassing first version, a bunch of people saying no, and then, eventually, something clicks. Not because they got lucky at the end, because they were willing to be bad at this in public over and over until they weren't bad at it anymore. The version of the story you see now, the polished brand, the confident interview, the overnight success, that's not chapter 1. That's chapter 12. And if you're only comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 12, of course it feels impossible. Of course it feels like everyone else has it figured out and you don't. Now here's something practical you can actually use today, something I wish someone told me way earlier. Give yourself permission to run what I like to call a 72-hour test. Not a business plan, not a 5-year projection, just 72 hours. In the next 3 days, take your idea and do one small, real-world thing to test it. Message 10 people who might want it. Make a rough version and show it to a stranger. Post about it somewhere and watch what happens. That's it. Low stakes, short timeline, real action. Because here's what happens when you do this. You stop living in someday, and you start living in this week. And someday is exactly where dreams go to quietly die. And listen, I need you to hear this next part clearly. The version of you that starts messy and figures it out as they go, that person ends up so much further ahead than the version of you that waits for permission, waits for confidence, waits for the perfect plan. Waiting feels productive. It feels like you're preparing. But really, you're just rehearsing a performance that never actually happens. So let's bring this back to that idea you've been sitting on for a second, because here's how the story could actually go differently. Instead of spending 3 more years perfecting it in your head, Imagine if in week 1, you just messaged 20 people in your neighborhood. Hey, would you use something like this? Yes or no? That's it. No website, no business plan. Just one honest question. Maybe 12 people say yes. Now you're not guessing anymore. Now you've got real information. And suddenly, the fog clears a little. The next step becomes obvious because it's not theoretical anymore. It's based on something real. That's the entire difference between people who stay stuck for a decade and people who build something in a year. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not even resources, not really. It's the willingness to take one small, uncomfortable, real step before you feel ready. Because you will never feel ready. Nobody does. Readiness is a myth sold to you by your own brain, trying to keep you safe and comfortable and exactly where you already are. So here's what I want you to do. Right now, take your idea, whatever it is, and shrink it down to the smallest possible test you can run in the next 72 hours. Not the perfect version, not the impressive version, just a real one. Message someone. Make something rough. Ask a question you're scared of the answer to. Because that one small action is worth more than another year of thinking about it ever will be. The cycle breaks the moment you stop waiting for permission and start collecting evidence instead. Not evidence that you're ready. Evidence that this thing you've been dreaming about could actually work in the real world with real people. And once you have even a little bit of that evidence, going back to someday becomes almost impossible. Because now you know something you didn't know before. And that knowledge, that's the thing that actually changes lives. Not the big dramatic leap. Just one small, honest, uncomfortable step, taken this week instead of next year. If this hit home for you, you already know what to do. Stop rewatching motivational videos as a substitute for action and go run your 72-hour test. I'll see you in the next one.